Okay, so hi everybody. This is our follow-up interview with Paddy Gaffey, who was our Transplant Sport Scholarship winner, if you remember, from a few months ago now. So welcome back, Paddy, back in the UK after your little exciting trip to Australia. So if you could just kind of start by, giving us an overview, like what was the setup like of the games?
Yeah, thank you. It was good. It was an unreal experience. So I got there a few days before the games, and where we were staying in the hotel as a therapy team was sort of like the main base for Team GB anyway. So we managed to get sort of a clinic room sorted up on the top floor, and like the day before we met as a therapy team before everything started, we went through sort of a schedule for the week that we try and stick to, but we knew that we may have to be a little bit flexible with that. And yeah, so we were either allocated clinic times or an event or a sport that we'd try and follow throughout the event. And yeah, it was really good, really good.
Good. I mean, it sounds like you've had a really good time. So you said like you were kind of based together to start with, but did you have to split up? Were the events split up around Perth? Did you have to travel far?
Yeah, so majority were sort of based around Perth, within sort of like a 15-minute drive. But yeah, most of the events were sort of in different areas anyway. There was a few that were sort of like the HBF sort of sports complex kind of thing. So I know the swimming and the athletics was sort of in a similar area. But apart from that, yeah, all over. So I covered on the third day, I think it was, the cycling, which was at Honorary racecourse. That was about a 45-minute drive north. And that was sort of like, you were getting pretty close to the bush. As you were driving out, it was getting less and less sort of busy and built up. So, and then all of a sudden this race course comes out of nowhere. It was a beautiful setting. But yeah, that was about a 40-minute drive away. But as a whole, majority was sort of based around sort of Perth city centre anyway. Yeah, so we tried to split up in terms of, we tried to give the athletes as much support as possible in terms of trying to cover as many events at once, so that each athlete, or as many athletes as possible, had some sort of support. Our therapy team was made up of 5 therapists and 2 psychologists as well. So there were some events that there might not have been a therapist there, but there was one of the psychologists there anyway. So yeah, tried to sort of break off a little bit and then go and sort of spend the day with the team, and then sort of come back at the end of the day as a therapy team, meet up, have a debrief, and most nights we went out for food together as well. So it was good.
Sounds good. So what was it like kind of fit? You've said obviously you were very much a team out there, which is fantastic to hear, but what was it like with you kind of trying to settle into a new team? And obviously it was, as you said, relatively small team. You were spread quite thinly. What was that like for you?
No, it's good. It's good. I like being in a team. It's sort of normal for me to either be part of a team or work within a team. So yeah, I think I settled in quite well. I knew majority of them from the training sessions down in Oxford. There was Lisa and Tom, who I hadn't met, but yeah, I think we all got on really well, and very quickly sort of started to work together as well as individually. So, but I really enjoyed it. We did sort of a team building exercise on the first day, which was run by one of the transplantees. And he set up a bit of a, like a team building exercise where we sort of talked about some of our values and what we wanted to achieve as a team, and then some little fun drills that were mainly embarrassing for us, but everyone else was laughing. So, but yeah, I think that broke down a few barriers, and we could sort of have a laugh. And that was part of like one of our sort of values was enjoyment and enjoying the week, as well as obviously being professional, and we're there to provide a service to the transplantees and the athletes. But at the same time, we were there to enjoy ourselves as well, which I think we did. So yeah, we all got on really well. I shared a room with Harry, one of the other sports therapists as well. So spent a lot of time with Harry. He's really nice lad. He stayed out there. He flew to Sydney afterwards. So it was nice, sort of like a short, sort of intense time. It sort of allows you to get to know people quite well, doesn't it? So it was good.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like as a team, I think you guys went out there, like you said, you didn't know everybody that well, but I feel like, well, from what you're saying, I feel like you've really got to know each other and they've all got to know you really well, which is really nice. And it's really nice to kind of hear that you've had such a positive sort of team input, if that makes sense. So yeah, well done. And I feel like that's been a really positive experience all round. And quite funny to hear about your little team building activities, actually. Was that just with you as a therapy team, or was that with the athletes as well?
The team building exercise.
Yeah.
No, just as our therapy team.
Okay.
So it was it was just at the hotel outside, and we sort of sat down and talked a little bit. And from that, you sort of found that each sort of therapist was from kind of a different setting anyway, even day to day, or I know sort of as a majority sort of based around Cov Uni, but obviously I've come from a different uni and my work settings differently. So we sort of talked about different approaches and how together we support ourselves as a team, but also individually what each of us could offer and how each of us were sort of an asset to the team. And then the team building exercise was sort of like, we somehow acquired some pillowcases that we had to put on our heads, and we were only able to use numbers as a form of communication and like a buzzer on a phone. So we had an obstacle course set up, and we had to sort of make our way through that blindfolded with only two of the other therapists sort of guiding us through that. So a bit of fun, sort of a bit of communications like work as well, but overall, yeah, it was good. So.
Good. I mean, that's what it's all about, isn't it, really? But
yeah,
really pleased to hear that you got on really well with the team, and it sounds like you've had a great time there. But just coming back to those athletes, so obviously you were working with a new sort of set of athletes to you. You'd not really worked with transplant athletes before. So what was that like? And could you give us kind of a bit of advice on what you had to do differently, or what you had to really think about a little bit more?
Yeah, it sort of was different in some aspects and then not in others, kind of thing. So my first sort of bar meeting quite a few at Oxford, my first sort of time that I spoke to a transplantee in terms of the games was actually, there was one at the airport in Qatar that had been on my flight, but I didn't realise. And I recognised his bag and went over and was obviously talking to him. And he was a kidney transplantee, and because we had like a 2-hour sort of layover in Doha, I managed to speak to him for quite a bit. And he was a sprinter, and he'd actually had like an ongoing Achilles issue for a while. And I spoke to him about how he'd been preparing for the games, and he said, just using a bike in the gym. And I was like, all right, okay. And then, have you done much running or sprinting? He's like, no, I've not sprinted in like 4 or 5 months. And so I was like, oh wow, that's okay, fair enough. And then on the other hand, you speak to a few of them, and I sort of quickly sort of understood that everybody had their own reason to be at the games, and that differed quite a lot. But as a whole, it was more, you had people who've had transplants, and they were celebrating that gift of life through sport and through the event. And then on the other hand, it was more athletes who have had transplants. That's the way that I sort of saw it. Was there was people there enjoying it, competing in sport, and doing sort of taking that approach. And then the other approach was sort of really serious. They wanted to do well. They had goals set out, and as a therapy team, maybe we approached that differently compared to somebody else with different sort of reasons for being at the games. So yeah, I think management obviously you manage everybody the best that you can in that situation. But there was some that, you know, maybe needed a little bit more support. I think having the access to both psychologists was brilliant, which I didn't realise how important that would be, regardless of what their reason for the games were. You know, it's always a benefit to have that as well. So that was a really good sort of, you know, asset to the team in terms of, we can do this, but also we have this to help you out as well. In terms of, I don't know, event preparation, or in just general sort of stuff as well. They were there to support, and we were there as well to support as well. So yeah, I'd say, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So, I mean, I like that you kind of interacted a lot with the psychologist as well. And, you know, we've said many times that any injured athlete that is presented, well, or presents to us, you know, they're first and foremost a person, and they're not just an injury for us to kind of work on and deal with. But yes, that's really nice. And obviously you get quite a lot of that with the transplant athletes. And I think it's one of those things where if you treat them as a person and you can work together with, like, you know, the different aspects that are in your team, I think you provide a really nice, well-rounded support to them, don't you? And yeah, that kind of comes across, and I feel like that was probably really beneficial to the athletes as well, is to have that sort of mixed approach as well.
Yeah, they were very, very grateful for everything that we did, which was quite evident. And even, you know, little things, they were just very, very grateful for us being there. So it was very rewarding when you were able to help somebody, which it always is, but maybe a little bit more in this scenario.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Okay, so what kind of like injuries did you actually work with? Obviously, you said about the guy on the plane with his Achilles, but what on the ground? What were you facing?
I'd say as a whole, like majority, there was sort of ongoing injuries that they brought to the games, and it was very much, how can we manage this athlete in a way that they're able to compete and they're able to get through that week. So that was probably like the majority of it, in terms of, you know, ongoing sort of tendinopathies, or you know, general aches, or stuff that's previous injuries that haven't really been addressed, or stuff like that. So a lot of it was more, what can we do in this sort of scenario here right now to help them get through, and also can we try and educate them a little bit more, obviously with the British Games coming up in July. How can we sort of give them a plan to sort of go away with and try and work towards as well. And then acute injuries, there was a couple. There was a shoulder injury of one of the badminton players. And I mean, I sort of managed that as well, and sort of did everything we could do. But there's just some injuries that, you know, he wasn't able to compete at the time, which was quite disappointing. But at the same time, he was very grateful for, you know, all the effort we put in. Yeah, so that was one that was a bit disappointing. But again, on reflection, there's sometimes you just can't get athletes to compete in such a short space of time. There was another one, a volleyball player who potentially, or like, queried stress fracture. And that was quite an interesting one when I spoke to Sheila, one of the therapists, about, you know, stress fractures and other injuries that, you know, you see in day-to-day sort of sports therapy, but actually you don't, you know, you maybe need to consider it a little bit more with transplantees, with sort of the medication, the steroids, and whatever medication they're on, can sometimes affect that as well. So I got glimpses of a bit more information to that by speaking to obviously, as a therapy team, we had a lot of experience within transplant sport. So for me, coming in with it being my first experience, everything was new. So I was learning all the time, and learning a lot off the athletes themselves. Like, you know, when you speak to a therapist about it, it's very generalized of what they've seen during their experiences. But at the same time, what I found was, every time you speak to a transplantee, their experiences, even though it might be a little bit similar, they'll be on maybe different medication, or their experience have been different, or their sport or their demands or whatever they can tolerate is different as well. So Yeah, they were sort of the two that were sort of the main ones, and then the rest were more just ongoing injuries that they'd sort of brought to the games off the top of my head.
Yeah. Okay, so at least there wasn't anything too over dramatic in terms of acute injuries. It's nice to hear that. Obviously, we don't want the athletes to sustain them sort of injuries, and we need them to carry on. And obviously, you know, represent GB and UK, which is really, really nice. But okay, so just let's come up to kind of round this up now. So out of everything that you kind of experienced at the games, what would you say would be your highlights?
My highlights were quite a few. So the opening ceremony, that was quite good. That was based at the Optus Stadium, and it was quite cool to see every sort of athlete there together from all different countries. I think there's 40, I can't remember how many, but there's about 40 odd countries. So a lot of athletes who were there. And actually, Harry, one of the therapists, speaks very good Portuguese. So when we were walking up and down and, you know, experiencing that opening ceremony, before we even went into the stadium, they made us line up on like this bridge to get a picture and to go around, and Harry was speaking to like the Brazilians and stuff, and it was didn't have that competitiveness to it. It was more, oh, we're all here together, you know, celebrating the gift of life, and here to sort of have fun and celebrate. That was a massive highlight. And then when we went into the stadium, a little bit more education on, you know, organ donation, and organ donation in Australia as well, which was quite cool to learn about. To do so, something interesting I learned about that was in Australia, it's quicker to fly from Perth over to the East Coast to do with the jet streams and stuff. So in terms of transporting organs, they have to consider that quite a lot in terms of timing as well. So that was something that I'd never even thought about. Obviously, the geography of the country, how that affects the transportation as well, with it being such a vast country and Perth being so isolated in Australia. That was one. I liked the cycling. I did really enjoy that. It was a really cool setting. It was sunny that day as well. And the cyclists as a team were, you know, they were quite professional with it. They took it serious, which I quite liked. They were competitive, and they did well on that day. Badminton was very good as well. I did the badminton doubles, and then on the final 2 days was the athletics. So as a therapy team, we were pretty much all there throughout the 2 days, and yeah, that was a busy day. That was a good day. The weather was nice, and that was sort of lots of medals won, lots of, you know, success, lots of stories told as well throughout the days and stuff. And then we had the closing ceremony that evening as well. So lots of highlights throughout the game that, you know, there's probably too much to reflect on in such a short space of time. But yeah, definitely a really, really good experience that I won't forget.
No, that's really good. It sounds like an overall really positive experience for, you know, you, the team, all the athletes as well. So yeah, thanks for sharing all that with us. Obviously, being the Transplant Sport Scholarship winner, we really wanted to hear your feedback. And just if you had to, not necessarily for this transplant sport, but any of the scholarships that the SST might offer, what would your recommendation be to members?
Just go for it, apply it if it's something that interests you or something, you know. So when I saw the application for this, I actually wasn't sure what it was for until I had to look into it. I could have easily just sort of scroll through my emails and not read it, sort of thing. So, you know, if you are looking for new opportunities to learn and to work and to network, and just new experiences, it's definitely something that, why not? You're not going to lose out. You know, either you get it and you win the scholarship, or you learn and you reflect on that. And you know, it's an experience just to be interviewed for it and go through that process as well. and you just put yourself out there. So yeah, definitely recommend it. And a massive thank you from me to the SST. I know everybody at the World Transplant Games and Team GB and the therapy team were really grateful for the scholarship. Being able to just send someone over there was, more than I realised until I got there. And yeah, and for me personally, it's something that I can look back on and go, well, what an experience that I probably wouldn't have had without the scholarship being there for me to attempt to get.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Paddy, for giving us all that feedback. It's been lovely to hear, and obviously lovely to know that the SST scholarship was really well received and appreciated by all. So on that note, stay involved with transplant sport. Keep up with everything that they're doing, hopefully at their next games here in Coventry, actually, in July. So hopefully we will see you there. And that's it. Thank you. I'll speak to you again soon. Take care.
Thank you very much.